This is the Lightning Junkies podcast with your host, Chaz. On this week's episode of the podcast, we have Nicholas Berthe, and we're talking about Bitcoin Beach, Galoy Wallet, circular economies, El Salvador, and all kinds of good stuff.
Before that, a message from your friends at the Lightning Junkies podcast. We try to keep this podcast as bullshit-free as possible. We try to avoid advertisements and don't waste your time when we can help it. We'd ask that you consider supporting what we do. You'd support both Chaz and Kat in their Bitcoin Lightning journey. The easiest way to support us is by listening to us on Breeze Wallet or any of the other value for value apps at newpodcastapps.com. For other ways to support the podcast, please visit lightningjunkies.net/support. There you will find the places to listen to the podcast as well as ways to support us with Bitcoin over the Lightning Network. Help keep this podcast ad-free and support us today. Now on with the rodeo.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very good, thank you.
Absolutely. You know, I kind of feel bad that I didn't get you on sooner. It feels like, you know, the El Salvador news is like 1,000 years old now at this point. But in reality, it's only like 2 months old. That only happened at the beginning of June, that being revealed. And so, you know, a lot of things might have changed in the last 2 months. Maybe not that much, but, you know, enough for you to have something to tell me. But before we launch into all of that, I wanted to kind of just to get a, you know, more basic start here and just ask, you know, how you got into Bitcoin, how you got into being interested in the Lightning Network and all that.
Yeah, so I got into the Bitcoin space in 2019. Prior to that, I was working on another cryptocurrency. So I really went to my blockchain journey from a technical standpoint. So I have a, you know, mathematic image processing background. I started the first company in the VR space in that one from 2012 to 2017. And in 2017, so we were developing software for VR with my first company, and we were developing software on GPUs. And something weird happened in 2017 for the price of GPU. Instead of, you know, going down from like $200 to $150 over the course of the year, like the price actually for GPU was increasing over the year. The reason being there was, you know, all these miners that were buying all the GPU available for Ethereum. And this is how I got into this space initially. I had a spare GPU at home, so I just, you know, plug it and try to see, okay, let's try to understand what this thing is. Like, it sounds weird. And so initially for the first like 2 years, I went into the rabbit hole of like what Ethereum was, and ultimately ended up, you know, working with a project that we create an alternative to Ethereum. And I really approach this from a tech standpoint. I believe if you only consider the technology part, you know, there's a lot of interesting things happening there. But during my journey, I also learned about the economics side of things. And this is where I understand that actually, if you really, you know, you need to have both, I believe, knowledge, both the tech and the economics to really understand what Bitcoin is. But as I start to understand the economic piece, you know, I understood that Bitcoin was the thing, right? Bitcoin is a sound money. And this is the thing I wanted to work on as an entrepreneur. You know, I think the other protocol have, to some extent, some value to bring, but, you know, it's nothing compared to sound money, and sound money is Bitcoin. And so I quit what I was doing at the time and say, okay, let's try to do something in the Bitcoin space. And this is how I decided to work on Lightning in 2019.
It's pretty interesting because I've had quite a few guests on the podcast that started, you know, I mean, before they were into Bitcoin, they were into VR in some way. Are you still into VR, or has that gone, you know, completely by the wayside?
I'm no longer really actively looking into what's happening in the VR space. And part of this is, so I was part of the hype cycle in the VR space that went from maybe 2014 to 2016, and that was a very exciting experience for me. But it's also like I put so much work in my first company, and I had to shut it down in 2017. And I was like, okay, I spent like 6 years in my life in the VR space, and the the conclusion on my side was not, the easiest to swallow, I guess, because I had to shut down the company. I quit it 6 years prior because VR didn't took off at the time. And so this is when I said, you know what, I want to change, industry. I want to go somewhere else. And this is where I was into this, blockchain, Web3. And so I know that VR is getting a bit more traction today, but still not what, still not enough to have a real industry yet behind it. I'm only following it from far away, but I believe maybe there is a common pattern between VR and Lightning, which is like frontier technology. So when I started working in the VR space, it was in 2012, which was, very, very, very early to work on VR, right? And probably the pattern here is that, working on Lightning, like two years ago was also very, very early. I mean, there was, on my side, it was clear that Lightning will become something big. But it was not a shared opinion between Bitcoiners. It was not a lot of people had this in mind 2 years ago.
So yeah, you make a good point that VR and, Bitcoin/Lightning, maybe Lightning more specifically, are very similar in that respect. And maybe people get too kind of buy into the hype a little too easily. They assume that everything's going to happen tomorrow kind of thing. So I would assume in 2012, you mainly had, the Oculus DK1, the first development kit, and you didn't have much else, but like people assumed, tomorrow that VR was going to take over the world. And I think it's almost the same idea in Lightning, a couple of years ago, even. People were like, oh man, this thing is actually starting to work now. It's, in 2 years, this thing is going to own the planet. And, obviously we're not owning the planet quite yet. We're obviously making some good strides here. But yeah, it just seems like, it's very easy for people in VR and people in, Bitcoin and maybe crypto generally to just get overly excited about what they're working on or what they're into.
This is what it is when you work on frontier technology, is that, it's like you live in your own bubble to some extent, right? You have a vision for the future that is not shared by a lot of people, but you believe into it. And the power of technology is that when something gets traction today, like it can go quickly. And, there is a question in the Lightning space, right? Like, I mean, I'm very bullish about it, but when is a tipping point where suddenly there is this network effect that makes, that will bring 1 billion user into Lightning? When is this tipping point? I don't know. Is El Salvador the tipping point? Maybe after El Salvador, in a couple of months, there will be another country that say, hey, you know what? I think that's the future and we want to get into it. And this will be the tipping point. We don't know. And we don't necessarily control it, right? We can try to influence it and try to, the more entrepreneurs there will be in the space, the more likely this may happen because there will be more resources, there will be better tooling, there will be better wallet, and maybe there will be more wallets, in different countries, and this is something that will create a network effect. But one of the challenges with frontier technologies, you don't know, right, when will scale happen.
The kind of question that kind of hits my head here is, in VR right now, the pioneers of the space is basically Facebook, unfortunately, Facebook and Valve mainly. And I think in Bitcoin and Lightning, it's kind of the opposite. We do have our corporate, entities in the space, but it seems like the majority of the innovation and, the fun stuff, as it were, is coming from more of the kind of ground level of like the grassroots level. Would you agree with that?
I think so. So I have a funny story to tell here. So yesterday I met someone in El Zonte that was actually working for Facebook, and they want to check what's happening in El Salvador currently, and it's possible. They will think this is a good payment technology and maybe go forward to it. And so I think things are moving fast. That say, yes, I believe today it's more the grassroots movement. It's more a lot of passionate people working on it, in their individual capacity, mostly, or, small startup. It's not the big company working on it. But when you think about it, and this is some of the discussion I had yesterday with this person from Facebook, is that if you think about the Libra, the way or the way Facebook will have to roll out a payment software, like they will have to be regulated wherever they launch, just because Facebook is so big, or it will be the same for Apple or for Microsoft or Google. Like they're too big to just experiment and in a sandbox environment. But when you're a small startup or when you're an individual, you can experiment, and this is why I believe it's great that it starts as a grassroots movement. And I can even compare it, what's happening in El Salvador currently. It started as a bottom-up movement, meaning it really started in El Zonte like 2 years ago. Some crazy people say, hey, let's try to get a local economy in Bitcoin here, in Bitcoin Beach. And from a bottom-up movement, it eventually came up as a top-down movement, where now the government say, hey, you know what, this is cool what's happening here. Let's make it a law and let's mandate it, right? Which is quite extreme, and we'll see how this play out. But the two eventually can converge at some point.
How about in your case, like you kind of got into Bitcoin as the sound money aspect. How did you kind of run with that? What was the project company that you kind of started there? When
I was thinking about, okay, I want to be in the Bitcoin space, what should I do? I initially think about doing a Bitcoin banking services, like a Bitcoin wallet, using Lightning, but really start in the US. And I was thinking, how to launch it in the US. I dive into the regulation aspect. And then I realized that, I think Lightning will not start in the US because it's, in the US, most people have electronic payment. It kind of works. It's not perfect, but you can just use your credit card, debit card pretty much everywhere. And so it was hard for me to see how to scale this in the US, specifically if you work on Lightning. I guess, if you're in the US, you will probably work more on the store value aspect of Bitcoin. And, it's more like a brokerage type of application where, hey, you can buy Bitcoin and you can store it, but you don't use it. You just like buy and store it and hodl it. But I really wanted to work on the payment part. So after some time, I was thinking, maybe the US is not the right place. And so this is like we were like end of 2019, early 2020, and so I was thinking about I should find another place, another country where I could experiment with not the regulatory burden that we have in the US. And this is how I come to El Salvador. This is why I decided to say, okay, this project in Bitcoin Beach is very interesting. They currently use a wallet of Satoshi to run their transaction. But as a result of that, they don't really know what's happening in the ground. When there is support question or, if someone is losing access to his wallet, they cannot really support on the ground, like the community, because, they're not part of, the wallet of Satoshi initiative. And so my thinking was, hey, I can help you. We can make a proof of concept and I can do a wallet for you and we see how it goes, right? And this is really how it started.
Obviously, it was probably not going to be possible to onboard each person to the Lightning Network, quote unquote, the normal way, or like the straightforward way where you open channels and you think about channels and you do all this kind of more tedious tasks. What was the philosophy behind your approach here?
Yeah, initially when I experiment with a non-custodial wallet on Lightning. You can think of the Breeze model or Moon model that we have currently, and I think it's hard to scale this. Maybe Bitcoin will become more efficient, and Schnorr will help, and CTV will help. But my thinking was like, if we want to bring a lot of people into Lightning, we'll have eventually to share channels, and so and I think custodial wallets or shared custody wallet, which is what we do, will be part of the scaling solution. And so what we do today is we have it looks like a bit like an exchange maybe, where we have a Lightning wallet, which is where the funds are to transact. It's a hot wallet we also have cold storage. And on the cold storage side, we have a multi-sig, and the keys are shared within the community. So, and which is something that you can do only on Bitcoin, which is, I think, very interesting. You could not do it with fiat money. You cannot say, hey, we have 5 out of 9 keys, and you need this 5 key to use the money from the cold storage. You cannot do that on chain. On the fiat money system.
Basically, it's set up as like a large Uncle Jim system where you're able to kind of do a good amount of the heavy lifting on the back end, but you also have this kind of less trusted system, I guess, because you have this kind of multi-sig on the back end.
Yeah, the Uncle Jim is a good model for this. I mean, currently there is 30,000 users using this wallet. So like, I think we passed the stage of the Uncle Jim, right? But maybe it's like, you have the non-custodial wallet, right? And maybe you have the Uncle Jim modem that may scale to 10 people, 20 people, maybe. And currently you also have the exchange model that's, they're trying to attract as much customer as they can, right? Like they're trying to having 1 million, 5 million, 50 million. And they're really trying to concentrate as much fund as they can, because this is how they can become profitable, right? Is if they have a lot of users. Here it's something in between. The idea is, first, we are open source, and so like everything we do can be replicated by any other community. And the idea that we have is that, instead of having these like large exchanges around the world that, maybe there is 5-10 of them, we could have maybe thousands of, small union bank, that they, in their own country, they manage, maybe 10,000, the fund for 10,000 people, maybe, 1 million people, but not 100 million people. And this is really how we're thinking about it, right? It's like we lower the barrier to entry for anyone to create it because it's open source. And so anyone can fork it and have their own, Bitcoin Beach wallet if they want in their own country. And so, the cost to create this wallet, is going to zero, basically. And this is how we, the way I'm thinking about it is creating a new category of wallet, right? The one that is very similar to a union bank in the US, for instance.
Just to make sure I understand what's going on here, is Galoy and Bitcoin Beach Wallet the same, or am I misunderstanding?
It's linked, but it's not the same. You can see as Galoy is a software company that is developing open source software. Our goal is to do open source Bitcoin banking services. And Bitcoin Beach Wallet is the first deployment of what we do at Galoy.
When you started this company, when you kind of built out the software, what was the local reception like down there? Was it like a hard sell at the beginning? What was it like?
No, it was not. It was fairly smooth, I believe. So, the way it started in Bitcoin Beach is there is a donor that donates, a couple of BTC. And so initially there were everybody in the village. So it's a 3,000 people village. Everybody received, $10, $20 in Bitcoin. And so, it was their first exposure to Bitcoin. What's interesting is because they receive it for free, like it really had no value, to their mind. Like it's something that, okay, sure, thank you, you give me a gift, I'm going to sell it for $1 and use it to do something. And so it's an interesting way to, get exposure to the people to Bitcoin, but it's not the way in their mind that, because they give it for free, like they don't associate, they don't see Bitcoin as something valuable, which is something interesting to think about. But then I guess the idea was to employ people to do something like clean the beach or some activity like that, and get them paid in Bitcoin. And it's a much more effective solution because it's like, okay, they receive their salary in this new money and they see more value out of it. And so on our side, like it was, deploying the wallet was not necessarily a hard sell because they receive money from it, and so like it's there was not too much question about it. I guess maybe was a bit more like time on education is on the merchant, because, okay, I know you have people that have, consumers that have money in their wallet, but if they cannot spend it anywhere, like it's not great, right? Like because the only thing they can do is go to the ATM and cash it for US dollar. And so the next step maybe which took longer, is like try to convert the merchant to accept Lightning, and it's a process that takes time, and there is a network effect to it. So I guess the first 20 was hardest, and after it was easier because the merchant sees that, okay, like my neighborhood, he has this Bitcoin sign, like maybe I should pay attention to this. And there is all these people that get paid in Bitcoin, and if I don't accept this money, like maybe I'm losing some business. But it takes a bit of time to get there.
So right now you're basically addressing the idea of building a circular economy. That's definitely been something that I think Bitcoiners have been, trying to make happen for years and years at this point. I'm not aware. I mean, I think there's pockets that have existed in places like Europe and stuff where this has happened, but I think this might be like the biggest version of a kind of circular economy where people aren't just engaging in like novelty of like, I live in the Western world, I'm getting paid in Bitcoin. Do I really need to get paid in Bitcoin? Is it going to be that transformative for me? Probably not, compared to someone in El Salvador, for example. But do you think that there has been a lot of resistance that, like, when maybe you're presenting this to people? Like, I feel in my personal experience and trying to onboard people in the United States, obviously a different ballpark, but when I tried to onboard them, they're like, why should I care? This magical internet money, it sounds cool for you, Chaz, but for me, I'm just going to stick with dollars. I can't wrap my head around it. Too much work, whatever. Do you get much of that?
Yeah, so what you can say is, like, on my side, I probably the comfortable position that I'm working more on the software side of things more than, going door to door and trying to convince, those merchants. This is the hard work of the people in the ground here, like Jorge and Chimbera and the team around it, the team that they built. And they are the ones that, having to do all the hard sell. Like, so on my side, I'm trying to describe the experience that they had, right? But it's not something that I had to do really myself, like convince those merchants. So I guess it's something I wanted to highlight. That says, so in San Salvador, something to have in mind is that 70% of the population, they don't have a bank account. They're not part of the financial system. What it means is they have to rely on cash. And so cash have a lot of great property. It's private, it's instant finality. But one of the properties that cash doesn't have is like you cannot pay someone remotely, for instance. And here, by letting them to use a Lightning wallet, suddenly they discover what you will have in the US or in Europe with PayPal or Venmo or Cash App or any of the solutions that, you can send money to anyone instantly. There is no such solution here in El Salvador for the people that don't have a bank account. And so it's really, for them, it's transformative, right? And so this is also why I think, they get to use it, is because it's not a nice to have like it will be in the US. Like here, it's really, okay, suddenly they can send, money to someone if they are in El Zonte, they can send money to someone in San Salvador, in the capital city. And instead of driving there, to pay their bill and to spend 1 hour, going there, like they just send money electronically, and it saves them half a day to pay their bill. And so this is a reason to, of course, adopt this new technology, right? And it's also why I was thinking about, hey, should I launch in the US or should I go elsewhere? And I ultimately decided that innovation in the Lightning space might not start in the US.
The question I'm thinking of here is, you kind of have, Bitcoin Beach. We have this legal tender situation, which seems very complicated. But I've seen numbers that say that the internet penetration in El Salvador is like 50%. The mobile phone penetration is like 125% or something like that. Would you say that presents a problem that, half the population doesn't have internet and they have to rely on cell phones?
This is not necessarily what I'm seeing at least in El Zonte. some people don't have smartphone, but on average they do. And so I'm not. I mean, I spend most of my time when I am in El Salvador in El Zonte, and sometime in the capital city. But I don't have a strong opinion on this. What I see is that people have smartphone overall, where in the place I spend some time on. So there might be some other area which are less developed. Maybe people don't have easy internet access, but this is not what I've seen, at least in El Zonte.
Well, like I mentioned, the big announcement of the legal tender thing happened in early June. Have you seen much change in the last 2 months? Have you seen like an acceleration of, things happening?
Yeah, there's a lot of, question about what will happen next month, like as the law become effective. What we see on our side in the wallet, like we had a spike of user registration on the wallet, like in June, like dramatic spike of more than 10x overnight. We now have about 30,000 users using the Bitcoin Beach wallet, which is great. I think in July things have slowed down, and now it's like everybody here is in the wait and see period. What will happen in September? For sure, I know that the larger enterprise, mid to large enterprise, they will not be ready to accept Lightning anytime soon. The reason being, today there is no easy solution to integrate Lightning payment if you have an ERP system, right? If you have if today you accept, maybe Visa, or if you accept some ACH payment, like there is not you click on a box and you have Lightning, payments you can accept. It's also because the tooling is not here today. Like we need to, as a Lightning community, we need to build solution for merchants, large merchant and larger enterprise to integrate Bitcoin and Lightning into, a larger payment system. And so far, it's people need to build that, right? And we're working on that. And I know other companies are working on that, but it will take time before the solutions are here. And so for me, like in September, it will be probably a lot of small merchants will start accepting Lightning, the ones that, when there is only one or two people working in a company, because you can just open a Lightning wallet, any Lightning wallet, and you have the same basically usage as you will have from a consumer standpoint, right? You don't need a different wallet, you don't need an API access. And so I believe a lot will start with more the small merchants, I believe. Another question mark is what will happen on the Chivo wallet, so the wallet for the government. So the government still have to give details about how this is going to work. We have had a presentation from Bukele, the president, like a PowerPoint presentation, 5-6 weeks ago that highlights some of the detail. But since then, there has been no further insight. So anyone in the Lightning and Bitcoin community who is in El Salvador is currently waiting for more guidance.
Are you nervous about there being this kind of government wallet and that some large portion of the population is just going to default to using the kind of government wallet?
No. I think there will be plenty of options. I'm not nervous about this at all. I think it's the free market may detect, what is the best wallet being used, and but it's we'll see, right? Like how much traction the Chivo wallet have. It's possible, like the government employee will be paid from the Chivo wallet at some point, and so there is, I believe, 300,000 government employees. So it will be, it's maybe the larger employer in the country, and so yes, a lot of people with the Chivo wallet, I believe. But as long as people can use other wallet, I think that's fair. But obviously, if 99% of the population use the Chivo wallet, then is it really? It might be something similar to the CBDC, right? Like on the sound money, but it's the scenario that I guess many Bitcoiners would not be in favor of. But it's not too much of concern on my side.
I feel like if you had gone back in time, or just in a parallel universe or something, you said, hey, I'm not going to choose Bitcoin Lightning. I'm going to choose Ethereum, let's say. I feel like you would be in a very different situation right now, because you wouldn't have the kind of range of wallets that you can choose from. You have your wallet of Satoshis, you have your Moon wallet, you have your Breeze, Phoenix, whatever, many different non-custodial wallets and some, community wallets or custodial wallets. I can't think of any other cryptocurrency or any other system that could have been used that would have provided that level of user choice or user freedom. Let's say, oh man, this Chivo wallet sucks. I'm stuck. Oh man. Oh wait, no, I'm not. I could choose these 10 other wallets and just withdraw my money and be fine. Would you agree with that kind of thought process that it basically had to be Bitcoin Lightning?
That's a good question. I'm not actively following, what's happening in the other blockchain. So I guess, Bitcoin and Lightning is where there is most variety in terms of wallet, but I'm not sure.
I guess from my perspective, maybe just looking at the biggest ones, like the biggest cryptocurrencies, like Ethereum, for example, they don't really have wallets that are non-custodial in the same way that these wallets are. I'm sure some Ethereum fans gonna message me very angrily and correct me if I am wrong there, but that's what I think is true, that it's a very different setup in a lot of the other cryptocurrencies, that they just didn't want to go down this kind of harder path that would kind of give us the optionality instead of it being we're kind of centralized, but don't worry about it. We have cool toys on top. So that's what you guys want, right?
Yeah, well, one thing that I remember is the privacy aspect. So there is not too much, I guess, talk about privacy in the Ethereum space, for instance. There is like this DeFi website that work, the TLV and how much money is locked in smart contract and stuff, and like everything is apparent on chain, and you can follow the whales, where they spend their money on, and everything is extremely visible on chain. And it seems like everybody is fine with it for some reason in the Ethereum community. But if you want to have some money, you need to have some level of privacy, I believe. For instance, this is something that Lightning is providing. And also just the Bitcoin system, you're like using, instead of using an account system, you can have, each time you receive payment, it's on a different address, Bitcoin address, and you have much better heuristic for privacy. And so this is one thing that comes to mind, that if you want really to use something as money, you cannot be exposed, every time you do a transaction, exposed to everybody, right? And this is also something very, I guess, particular to Lightning. On Lightning today, the graph, you see the public channels, but I believe there is more and more private channels. If you're just a user to the Lightning space, why do you want to be in the graph, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I believe all these, new wallet coming, Eclair and Moon and Breeze, and they are not, part of what's visible on the network, which I think is a great thing.
Let's pretend that I'm a, Bitcoin Beach wallet user here, and I know nothing about Bitcoin, know nothing about Lightning, and I asked you about the privacy of the wallet. What would you say?
I would say, if you are looking for privacy, you should use a non-custodial wallet, and, with some focus on privacy, the way you think about Bitcoin Beach, where we are, it's a place where people had no financial, access before, and what matters to them is easy UX. Some people are they cannot read, right? They are not only financial illiterate, but just illiterate to some time, and so privacy for them is not what's top on their mind. They are living not even paycheck to paycheck, but they have to work every day to pay for the food at the end of the day, right? And so when you're in this situation, you don't think about privacy. When you start thinking about privacy, when you already have financial access, and you're thinking, okay, maybe privacy matters at this stage. But this is not the community we're working with, not what they need, I believe. When you have privacy, you have to have some trade-off. Typically it's not as easy to use. Typically it has to be non-custodial, which means probably there is higher cost because you need to have your own UTXO, you need to open the channel yourself. if the cost of doing an on-chain transaction is $50, and $50 is what you earn in 2 or 3 days, like, it doesn't work very well. So my short answer, like, if you're looking for privacy, Bitcoin Bitrate is not the wallet for you.
So basically, my question came from a place of financial privilege there a little bit, just like, what is it? The Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that quite a few people in El Salvador are living on the level at which they are not concerned with privacy. They're not concerned with all the fancy stuff. They just want something that will work and will allow them to eat, really. So obviously, a Lightning Network, as you mentioned before, we're kind of early. Things could still change quite a bit in the next decade. And that, there's like a lot of things coming that might change the experience, that might make it easier to have, certain kind of community-based constructs. One of those things could be things like channel factories. I'm not sure if you've looked into any of these things, so I'm not going to push you on the spot about anything too specific. Is there anything in the future of Lightning that you're looking forward to that might improve the experience for all your users?
Yeah, there is multiple things. I think one of the things that is most needed, so use Lightning as a network, but maybe not as a store of value, or like use Bitcoin as a store of value. What it means is, stable channel. So like I receive some money I receive some sats over Lightning, but basically I really want dollar, or I really want euros, because if I'm a merchant, maybe I don't want to be subject to the volatility of Bitcoin. And I think eventually you should, right? But if you're managing a business, or if you have an expense, you need to have the base is having a checking account and a saving account, right? And your saving account, I think, should be Bitcoin, but maybe your checking account should be the same. You should use the same unit of account as your expense. So if you're spending euros, maybe you want to keep some euros to pay for your monthly bills. I believe one thing that is needed, and I know it's work in progress, right? But it's merging DLC with Lightning. In a way where you said, okay, I receive 10,000 sats, but what I really want is $10. And so, and I want this $10 to stay $10, in the next month, wherever the price of Bitcoin goes. And this is something that is needed to scale Lightning. And this is actually what this Bitcoin law is in El Salvador, right? So it's fairly clear that every economic agent here needs to be able to accept Bitcoin. But the way, they are saying you need to accept it is because if you don't want Bitcoin, we will convert it for you in dollar, right? What this means is we use the Lightning Network and maybe the Bitcoin Layer 1 network as a way of sending and receiving money, but we don't use it as a store of value, if that makes sense, right? And there is some nuance there. But today it's done in a way where, it's using exchanges and which is great to get started. But I believe there is a way to use DLC that would be very useful to have.
Would you say that that's something that you expect to be the case long term? Or do you think that the circular economy would make it so, I'm getting paid in Bitcoin, I'm paying for all my expenses in Bitcoin, I'm paying my employees in Bitcoin? Would that kind of stable channel or stable whatever make sense in that scenario at that point?
It depends on whether, hyper Bitcoinization is, complete or not, right? Like today, so Galoy is a company, right? And we have developers. They are being paid most of them are being paid in Bitcoin today. That said, the contract is not in Bitcoin. The contract is in dollar, right? So we calculate, okay, this is X amount of dollar in Bitcoin. This is Y, and we're sending Y Bitcoin. But the unit of account for the contract is still dollar. And so I believe it will be like this for a long time. I don't see using a unit of account in BTC anytime soon. I wish it would come at some point. Given the volatility that is hard, until you can both have your revenue and expense in BTC denominated assets and revenue, and expense, it's hard to have this assumption, right? So eventually we may be here in 10 years, I don't know, 5 years, but for the time being and for the foreseeable future, for sure, I think most people want to price their good in dollar and euros and not in BTC.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess I would love to be paid in a set amount of BTC, but that's only because I assume it's going to go up. Not everyone has that same level of conviction there about that. So, and I think it's probably not fair to expect them to either.
Yeah, and if you look at the cycle, right, you can, okay, sure, in the next 4 years, if you keep it, it's most likely being up in 4 years, right? But the thing is, if there is some odds that it go down, 80% still in the next 3 months, and you don't want a company to go bankrupt because it didn't have enough US dollar at this point. So when you have liability as a company or even as an individual, and they are denominated in USD, it's hard to keep everything in Bitcoin, right? Even if and you think, and there is a very, very high likelihood that in 4 years it will be higher. If you need to manage your expense in the meantime, right? So
I guess we're kind of reaching towards the end of the podcast here. The way that I like to kind of end out the shows is by trying to figure out a call to action to the audience that, not to go buy something or anything, but to go do something to kind of support the network and to kind of give back, because I think that's how we improve our network effects. That's how we build a bigger, stronger network, et cetera, et cetera. There's people all across the world that listen to this podcast, not to, be too full of myself here, but I see the numbers. I know it is. So what would you say to people out there that are not in El Salvador, that may not have the ability to go, or, just have a different life that they're living wherever they are? What can they do to start, supporting from afar or by replicating what you guys did down there?
The best way to help on our side is contribute to the wallet we have been building. So, the Bitcoin Beach wallet is open source, is in the Galoy Money repository on GitHub. And so if you're a developer or if you have some, QA expertise or something along this line where you can contribute, go to GitHub and just, there's 150 tickets to grab from, things to optimize on the wallet. So we need a lot more help on the development side, or do documentation, or no API, or there is so many things that to be done on this side. This is where we need most help on our side. Yeah, if you're a developer, please reach out. But otherwise, if you way to help, if you're not a developer, if you cannot go to El Salvador. One thing the idea I like is, okay, you can learn Spanish. You can, hire someone here in El Salvador to learn Spanish. You pay him in sats. It's one way to make sats flow into the country that is, very convenient. You don't have to move here. So it's something I can recommend.
Do you have any recommendations on how people could maybe replicate the Bitcoin Beach kind of model and start building out their own circular economy kind of thing?
There is so much thing to share, right, to be able to replicate the Bitcoin Beach project. And I think on our side, we want to try to write some form of a white paper around it, how, the Bitcoin Beach history. And it will take a bit of time to do it, but it's something I'm thinking of because it's a recurrent question. At least what I can say on the wallet side is that the Bitcoin Beach wallet is open source, as I was saying. And so basically, if you're, a developer, you can just, fork what we do and just launch it in your own country. You don't need our help. And this is what we want to see happen, right? Is that, and we see already some people, starting to look into it. It's not easy to do as of now. We're trying to improve this, but I think, in Latin America, in other country, or in Africa, I will expect maybe 4 or 5, different wallets popping up in the next 6 months that will be, in a similar form as the Bitcoin Beach wallet. I'm really excited about this, by the way. I think it's this is how we can get the network effect in Lightning. Is that if in any country some developer entrepreneurs that launch that give access to Lightning to their own community, this is how these things can evolve exponentially in the next year or two.
My final two questions are going to be, the first one is going to be, can you give me a kind of negative or pessimistic outlook of the kind of future in El Salvador when it comes to, Bitcoin, Lightning, Bitcoin Beach, all of that, the kind of less positive path? And then my next question will be about the positive path.
Yeah. Something very interesting happening as a result of Bitcoin becoming law and, with the initiative pushed by the president of El Salvador, Bukele, is that now Bitcoin is politics, which is, Bitcoin has been made to not being politic, right? Bitcoin is really apolitical. But no, in the country here, some people will say, oh, you know what? I don't like the president, therefore I don't like I don't like Bitcoin, right? I don't want the money of the president, which is very, which makes sense when you think of it. But at the same time, it's, Bitcoin has been created to be the opposite of that. So this is something very interesting to see. But as a result, some people, they like eventually Bitcoin before, but now they're not sure, right? They feel it push on them, and they don't like this necessarily.
Could you give me like the positive outlook down there?
I mean, it's obvious. Like it's for Bitcoin, like maybe this is the first domino to fall as a country, and maybe many other will soon follow. And this is maybe the beginning of what as Bitcoiner we all think of, the beginning of hyper Bitcoinization. So this is if we can make it work, and there is a big if here, like there's a lot of challenge ahead of getting 6 million people using Lightning in the next month or even the next year. There is so many tools that is needed that are not here yet that we need to develop. But if we can make it right, and I think it's the beginning of something huge for humanity. So yeah, I think let's make it work, right? I would say.
So that's pretty much the end of the show there. Do you want to let the listeners know how they can find you on the internet and get in touch with you if they need to?
On Twitter, Nicolas Berthet.
All right, perfect, Nicolas. Well, I want to thank you again. Boom. That was the 49th episode of the Lightning Junkies podcast. Hopefully we got a bit of an update of El Salvador here. As I'm sure most people know, the law is going into effect tomorrow, so we'll see how things actually turn out. Just a general reminder that we also have a mostly weekly, Lightning Network discussion on Twitter Spaces called Lightning Friday. It is at 4 p.m. Eastern Time and 8 p.m. UTC. Every Friday, as often as we possibly can. Sometimes we have a kind of very strict topic, and sometimes we just do it off the cuff. The other hosts are Evan Kaludas and Justifer, and we all think that you should listen sometime. Just a quick reminder that Kat and I do a lot of work to make this show happen. A lot of things happen behind the scenes that aren't evident in order to make things run as smoothly as possible. So please consider chipping in via Breeze Wallet or any of the other ways you can find at newpodcastapps.com, or you can go to lightningjunkies.net/support to find other ways to support us. All right, friends, that's all we have here at the end of the podcast. I will see y'all on the Lightning Network.